Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the June 15, 2022 Worcester Township Board of Supervisors business meeting. Would you please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, folks. My name is Rick DeLello. I'm the chairman of the board. To my left is Lou Betts, who's our vice chair. To my right is Steve Quigley, our third member. Over on the side table in the back is Tommy Ryan, our township manager. And on the front table, we have Bob Brandt, who is our solicitor, and Joe Nolan, who is our township engineer. First and foremost, does anybody have any informational items for the board tonight?
This evening's meeting is being video recorded for rebroadcast.
Thank you, Tommy. Next item on the agenda is public comment. We do ask that you limit your public comment to 5 minutes. Does anybody have any public comment for the board this evening? I'll come back to you in a minute there, John. No, you're good, Bob.
Bob Fesnack, live at 2203 Alabac Lane in Worcester. First of all, I just want to thank you guys for last month's meeting and I believe making a commitment to have an open space referendum on the November ballot. I guess my question is mainly around the process. I have some general ideas about the advertisement and deadlines. I don't really know all the deadlines. I would love it if someone here tonight could just walk us through or walk me through, sort of the process and how, just making sure that we're all committed to continue that process and meet all the deadlines. I know one's a tight one coming up in July or something.
Let me try to do that for you.
Great. Yep.
First of all, last meeting, we talked about the board adopting a resolution, which was presumably here, but in doing the research, we realized that we have to do it by ordinance, which is a slightly different procedure. But the process for a referendum, it's for a $500,000 increase of real estate tax for open space process. We've started that process. The ordinance will be scheduled for the agenda on July 20th. That's our regular meeting.
Right.
That ordinance would be in a position for the board to act on it, to vote to, adopt that. Effectively, then it will be placed on the docket. The referendum will be placed on the ballot for the November election. If the voters vote in favor of the referendum, the tax in effect will start on January 1st, 2023. It's proposed to raise $500,000, which would be roughly $500,000 a year. If approved by the voters, no changes in the tax can be made for 5 years. We were a little uncertain about that. And there's brand new legislation that I didn't even know until we started looking at this that was effective June 20, just hot off the press, which amends the statute by the legislature that limited the use of the taxes raised to open space restricted it unless it was bought by the Open Space Act. That new legislation allows the township to maintain open space even if it was not acquired by the Open Space Act. So it liberalizes the use of those monies that would be gathered. So there's a number of steps that are put together for an ordinance, and I believe the first legal ad will be published on June 28th, and then it requires 3 advertisements, and they're already scheduled in our docket. The hearing is scheduled, as I indicated, on the 20th. It needs to be filed with the election board, and of course, has to go to the county. So that's roughly the process, and we didn't miss any steps.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that was good. So the July is the deadline. Then there was something in September, I think, some type of deadline, but it sounds like you have it
I hope
scheduled.
so,
You
yeah.
have it, a calendar or whatever following.
We've been,
what you
your
need.
manager
Okay.
yeah, we've been working on it. So again, I may have misspoke last time when I suggested a resolution, but I think what we found out was we needed to do it by ordinance because of the nature of what we were directed to do.
Right,
So
so the formal vote will be next month.
It'll be on the July
And the wording
20.
will be out and the ad will be run
Yeah,
by then.
and that's run in the, the exciting section of the newspaper in the classifieds.
Exactly.
So,
All right, well, thanks. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Bob.
welcome.
Both Bobs, I should say, in that case. John?
Thank you. My name is John Hobson. I'm a resident at 2851 Defford Road in Worcester. I wanted to make a comment on the, let me just finish this. On this letter that was sent, I guess, to a lot of the people in Worcester. It's a letter from Ed Mullen under the name of the Friends of Worcester LLC with the same logo that the Friends of Worcester currently use. I think it's a low point in the new strategy that the Palmer property is using for development. So anyway, I wrote down some notes and I just wanted to read them. I won't be that long. A couple of weeks ago, I received a letter in the mail from the Friends of Worcester LLC. I knew from the opening sentence that there was certainly something unusual in the letter. The Friends of Worcester LLC was for the development of the Palmer property under the guise of the new zoning proposition. I thought it was a strange shift in the previous policy in support of the Friends of Worcester, the actual real Friends of Worcester. When I found out as I continued to read was a letter that I thought was deceitful, disruptive, and despicable presentation of alternate facts from what the real Friends of Worcester has supported in the Palmer project development. The real Friends of Worcester has been a trusted and thoughtful community-based organization and a voice of many of the citizens that live in the Worcester, a trusted voice. And they have opposed the zoning changes since this whole process started. Some of the comments shown in this letter, in my mind, were misleading, as stated earlier, that they are deceptive. There's no mention of the number of townhomes. I think somebody has told me that there's 87 townhomes, maybe, that they're proposing in this new, I guess, process that they're starting. But they did talk about 30 acres of open space. But again, no mention of how many townhomes they were looking to build. Then there's a comment that there was $667,250 of new net revenue. I don't know how anybody could have figured out a number of $667,250. That sounds like a pretty exact comment to me, when they don't know how many people are going to move in, how many families, how many kids, etc. So I don't know how that figure was calculated. Then they say there's 70 new jobs that will be created from this. I don't know where those new jobs would be created, what, who. There's really no evidence of how many jobs, in my mind, could be created by this project. Essential services and positions would be, these 70 people would fill essential service positions, whatever they are. I don't know if Ed Mullen defines that or not. Age-targeted, first-floor bedrooms, just a short walk to essential goods and services. I don't know where the essential goods and services are in Center Point. There's a gas station. I guess they mean if they develop a CVS or a Wawa store. That really doesn't sound like a village to me. It just sounds like a, two new commercial buildings. The letter goes on to say that there's $50,000 spent in determining a mixed-use village, and that would be good land use. Again, I'm not sure, that could be an accurate statement. I'm not sure of that because I couldn't figure out, and I talked to a few people what he was referring to with that $50,000 land survey. A village, shops, public square. What and where would that be? And also, he goes in further to say there's $150,000 of legal expenses defending the Palmer property zoning, which is represented by the firm Hamburg, Rubin, and Mullen, and Ed Mullen is the author of this letter. So I don't know why he's bringing up the fact that the township has spent $150,000 when we're basically arguing over the zoning that they're proposing. So it seems to me that they've created the $150,000 of legal expenses. A pending zoning challenge that could lead to the development of supermarkets, big box stores, all plural, department stores, hotels, large clinics, laboratories, and all these things they're saying, basically, we won't have to do that now. We can just develop the 87 homes that they're talking about. And basically, that was all proposed in the last couple of meetings that I've been to with zoning by the same author or the same firm that represents the Palmer property. So I think the comments in this letter are misleading and are a deception of what the real Friends of Worcester supports and many of the people in the community. The logo, that logo, it's deceptive, and I feel that it's the material in the letter is just a strategic ploy that I personally should feel that should be an affront to our township citizens, no matter what side of support you're on, or you stand for. It should be an affront and an insult to the supervisors, I think, and I hope that many more of the people in the community will challenge this type of deception as an insult to our collective intelligence. I'd like to also say that I want to go on the record and say that if the Palmer property development wants to work within the current zoning, I'd be all for it. Current zoning is there and enforceable without challenge, and further endless debate and legal BS that could go on indefinitely, it seems to me. So that's my 5 minutes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, John. We appreciate the comments. The one thing that I can say is that we are defending our ordinance and have been. We're in litigation with them, so I can't really comment past that. But our Bob has been at
Right.
the hearings, and we're defending our ordinance. I mean, that's.
Well, I know that, but it's just the way the letter was written.
I understand, and we certainly empathize.
Yes.
John, just follow up to Rick's comment. I think your comment should really go, we really can't comment on this. It's not before our board. You need to go to the zoning hearing board and make the same statement you did there, that we're not involved with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Winnie?
Good evening. I'm Winnie Hayes. I live at 3033 Fisher Road. All right. So several things. First of all, thank you very much for moving forward to put the open space referendum on the ballot. And it's been something that many of us have hoped for and worked for some time. I understand that COVID kind of ground things to a halt. I'm really pleased that you're moving forward with it. I'd ask you to consider one additional thing as we move forward. You all have received the latest Montgomery County return on investment study for the value of preserving open space. I think that's been, and let me just make sure you have received it. You're aware of it, you all have read it?
I'm not sure if we've gotten a copy of it or not, to be honest with you. We do get stuff from the county, and there's a lot of literature we get from them. I'm not
Okay.
sure that we got that specific document or not.
Okay, maybe we can look into it, make sure you've gotten it. But what the conclusions were of that study is that open space is valuable, and preserving it is valuable. It's valuable to homeowners who live near it. It enhances property values. It has value in terms of stormwater management, preserving space for flora and fauna. Multiple purposes are served by preserving open space. So I'd like for you all to think about whether you want to weigh in on whether this referendum would have value for our township, and whether you would come out, as many supervisors in other townships have done, in support of the referendum. It would be helpful. It would be important. People look up to you. They've elected you as their representative. And I know in the past you've said you're going to take a hands-off, neutral kind of position. But the open space referendum and what it can accomplish over generations has great value. And so I'd like for you to think about it. I'm not asking for an answer tonight unless you have questions or comments you want to make, but I'd like for you all to get behind it. The second thing I wanted to say is I'm in total support of the comments made by John Hobson. What's going on right now in our township is despicable. It's really a shame. It's clearly an attempt to confuse residents, to make residents think that Friends of Worcester, an organization that's been around for over 26 years, a charity recognized by the state, a 501c3, is suddenly reversing its position and embracing the plan that the Palmers have put forward. Also, reversing its position on the value of an open space referendum. That's simply not true. And I can't comment about legal action that we might be taking because it's confidential. But I can tell you this is pretty atrocious. I think it would be helpful if our elected officials, I know it doesn't concern you directly, but it's an activity in the township that someone in authority should say, this shouldn't be going on. This is really pretty atrocious. One other thing, just to be aware of this, this action has raised concerns across the county. We're getting calls from other not-for-profit groups, other groups that are concerned with conservation and some of the issues that we are. There's a lot of anxiety out there about this, because if it can happen to us, it can happen to other people. And what I think is clearly going on is they're trying to spin us out of our ability to be active. This is costing money, and it's money that wouldn't have to be spent if this kind of action wasn't being taken. So I'm going on record as saying this is pretty despicable, pretty despicable. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. We appreciate your comments as always.
Rick, I'll comment. Winnie, I'll address your comments, I guess, regarding the referendum. And I'll be open with you. I'm having problems with it. I've talked to a lot of people in the township. Money's tight. Taxes are up. Gas prices are up. A lot of things are up. My problem is Worcester's sitting on $20 million in the bank, and we're asking taxpayers to pay more taxes when we have the money for open space. If the township needs to buy something or put money in a referendum, we can, if the township can make or bill the people $500,000, and I said to Bob and the other people before, I said, why don't we make it voluntary? How can we really ask the people with the state of the economy to pay more taxes? Although it's only $50 or $100 or $200, that's a lot of money to somebody who doesn't have money. And I think that the township has an open space fund. We started a fundraising drive within the township, and I'm just surprised the lack of support we've gotten from that information we put out. We sent letters out to the townships and residents. Would you like to support open space? And as of last week, I think only 24 people donated money to the township. I think it totals, as of last week, $6,000. That doesn't go very far.
Can I comment?
Yeah, you can comment.
Because I think your questions are legitimate questions. I think what I've heard, and I've talked to a lot of people too, is that a volunteer program is uncertain. People have no idea how many of other township residents are going to donate. They don't know if their contribution, as you just mentioned, will go into a really pretty small fund, $6,000. And it's not a consistent funding source. And so when we try to align ourselves with other organizations that might match funds or contribute funds or whatever, whether it's natural lands or it's the county or it's the state, without a consistent funding source, there's problems. So I hear that from a lot of people. A volunteer fund sounds nice, but nobody is certain what people are going to do. A second thing, just to take a look at, is I'm uncertain, because I've heard different numbers, how much the township actually has in an open space fund. Last week, I heard 18,000. Today, you just said 20,000. I know.
20,000?
I mean, 20 million. I heard
talking million.
18, I said 18,000, I mean 18 million.
Right.
Last week. I just heard from you 20 million. I've also heard that we've just secured the farm on Fisher Road, and congratulations. I think that's a good investment in open space, but that was 2 million. So the math I do in my head says, based on last week, what I heard, we should have 16 million. So
Well, we have, what we paid so far, but what we paid so far, I don't want to, I guess Mr. Ryan can give us an actual build-up of it. You know, I guess my point is, we had approximately $20 million. Now, you know, the deal signed, have we taken the money out of the bank yet? It's a negotiable asset there. It could be off depending on where the payment was made. That being said, my original point was, when we sit with, we'll say with $10 million in the bank, we'll cut to the chase. How can you ask the taxpayers to give you more when we have this big pot of money over there? We, the township, can fund the open space. We can just cut a check tomorrow and say, you know what, you want $500,000? The township will cut a check for $500,000, and there's the open space fund.
That's funds we have today. It doesn't mean those funds will be at that level going forward without renewal. And one other point, let me just, another point, is that the open space fund is a predictable, knowing, growing fund over time that contributes not just to an ability to acquire land or acquire easements, but also to maintain particular property. I think that's a pretty critical thing. And a good example of how I wish we'd used, I had no knowledge we had that much open space money in the township. We wouldn't be having this argument over the Palmer property if we'd used it to buy the Palmer property. The Palmer property could still be bought by the township under eminent domain. It would be a perfect setting to put a community center on the side where the current farmhouse is and so forth, and have a park and have open space on that land. It would be ideal. And if we have that kind of money, I would encourage us to really take a look at acquiring that property through eminent domain. Other townships in the area have done that, have done it very recently, like Mermaid Lake is a good example. So if we've got that kind of money, then why don't we take this Palmer property off the table and secure it for the township?
I think the question is, this money's been saved and squirreled for many years, and Worcester's always been pretty astute at spending their money. They've been watching where they spend their money. And we could have expenses. We'll go back a little bit. When I talk about the open space, I'm talking about the fund right now. I only can hope and pray that our economy turns around. If it doesn't turn around in the next couple of years, we may have a lot of homes on the market in Worcester with the mortgage rates. It just jumped 3/4 of a point today. That being said, I'm saying the state of the economy right now, I think it's tough to ask the taxpayers this year to vote on something to raise the taxes. I'm not talking next year, the year after. I'm talking in the immediate time frame we're dealing with right now, not saying a year down the road.
Let me
Can you jump
interrupt.
in? Yeah.
Let me interrupt, and I don't mean this out of disrespect to anybody, but my advice to the board is not to get involved in an eminent domain action with pending litigation on a development, and I can't say much more than that, but my opinion is it would place the township in quite a bit of risk if we use the word eminent domain with a pending matter that's being litigated. I suspect that we may be defendants in a case like that very quickly if we use those words. So my advice to the board is you use My advice has always been to the board to use the term eminent domain sparingly. And in this case, my advice to the board is, don't use it at all, and I don't want to comment on it.
Okay,
I
so
think-
I will avoid using that, but go back to the 20 million. The 20 million, it sounds like, isn't really all for open space. It's
Oh, no,
what's
no,
in
no.
this-
I'm
Right,
saying, our bank account money, I didn't say open space money.
I know.
We have a bank account.
I'm clarifying. So it's not all for open
No.
space, maybe a portion, but the point is, a dedicated fund would be for open space.
Right.
Without question. And the amount of money that it impacts each homeowner on average, is something on the order of $125 to $150 a year. That's a minor amount for the value gain in doing this. That's just my comments.
Winnie, I understand that, but when you talk to people that don't have $50 extra to do something, it's, once again, we're here with the fiduciary responsibility of looking at the finances in the township, and that's what we try to do. And I guess go back to the open space thing, I said that if we're talking about the situation now where we're going to raise $500,000, the township's in a position to move money around and put that money in just maybe for a year to see what happens with the economy for the open space fund. So we can be good stewards and say, you know what? We don't want to impact the township residents with all the things going on in the economy. We're going to jumpstart this whole program. We can make the first $500,000 donation, and let's see what's happened with our economy and people getting back on their feet where they can start affording, gas that doesn't cost $5 a gallon, or their electric bills and their food bills. It's a tough situation. So that's all.
Okay, thank
And I
you.
appreciate your comments. Steve, I appreciate your input as well. Does anybody else have any public comment for the board at this point? Thank you, Bill.
Bill McGrain, 3033 Stump Hall Road. I'm pinch hitting tonight for my daughter Billy, who came home to a sick cat and is currently at the vet with Jose. She, as you can see, is an officer of the Farmers Union Company. And it's a 180-year-old organization within the township. And we had a very successful horse show here on June 4th. And I'm speaking for the organization because she isn't here to do it. I'm a member. My mother was a 60-year member. There are other members in the room right now. There are sponsors in the room right now. But we wanted to give a little thank you to the township, to the supervisors, to the staff. The facility was excellent, always well maintained. And we had excellent weather, which is the key for a fundraiser. And we had over 50 horses participate with 60 different riders and lots of spectators coming and going all day. We were here from 8 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon, and it was a great time for everyone. And we just want to thank the township for continued support because COVID was really tough. It was really tough on the organization. And we want everyone to know we're back and we're going to keep up the good work. And thank you very much for the support.
You're very welcome, Bill. We're glad that you had good weather, and we're glad that it was an event in person. It's certainly
Bill, I don't want to be a homer, but how many winners did Worcester have?
Many more than you would think.
Oh, really? Good. Good. We fared well then with the other people. Okay, good. Congratulations.
excellent. Excuse me. Any additional public comment for the board? Sue?
I have it on my computer so I can read it. I just have two quick points of clarification or questions of what's already been said. One was about the deadline for the state, Bob, for the state being given our information for the referendum. I thought that was,
I can't hear you again.
I had a question about the date, date deadline for when the state would get our wording for the referendum to be put on the ballot. I thought it was July, so I was concerned because
It's August.
Oh, it's August, okay, great, thanks. And also, the statement was made earlier, I think, to clarify, Steve, that it was said that there was an $18 million in an open space fund, when really it's just a budget surplus, right? Township money. Yeah, it's township money that's, and it would be on the budget, it would be on a balance sheet if we had a copy of the balance sheet, but we don't. So anyway, what I had wanted to comment on was at previous boards of supervisor meetings, we were told that it's important that everyone should adhere to the township's rule on posting signs for only 30 days. So on May 26th, a sign was posted on the Palmer property at the corner of 363 and 73 that was confusing at best regarding the true position of the original Friends of Worcester regarding that property. Another entity who registered an LLC named Friends of Worcester LLC was quoted on the sign. June 25th will be 30 days since that sign has been erected. And my request is that the township send a letter to the property owner and/or their attorney, Ed Mullen of Hamburg, Rubin, Mullen, Maxwell, and Lupin, to remove the sign by June 25th. On a positive note, thank you again to the township for purchasing the property on Fisher Road to create an open space park there. Hopefully it will be tastefully done with the parking lots hidden in the back of the property, keeping the open green area in the front for those that drive or walk by the property to visually enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. We appreciate your comments. Does anybody else have any public comment for the board?
Rick, as he comes up, you know, I only wish somehow we could work things out that, I hate to see wars, I guess. It only gets worse as people start digging their feet in regarding situations with the legal battle with this property in front of us. I'd like to try to see that someone will say Skippack Township or some other township, they negotiate. And I just hate to see the lines be drawn in the sand where it become a bloody bath, a legal battle. And once you say things, you can't take them back. And I think that's, as John said, it's going to get nasty. And I personally think it's just going to end up in court, and a judge is going to decide. I hate to say that, but
Right.
and my lawyer may caution me against that, but
Best lawyer in all the land, by the way.
John, I agree.
We understand.
You're not. Many people have said the same thing. No question about that. But I just wish somehow we can come to negotiations and work something out that we all can be neighbors and friends and agree to something, because it's just these things. It's going to get a lot worse. I just see it getting a lot worse because it's going to become a very expensive legal battle on both sides. And, you know, who's going to run out of money first, I guess. That's going to be the issue.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. That's all.
I have one thing that I was remiss in not doing. I needed to announce that there was an executive session on a personnel matter on June the 7th, 2022.
Okay. Thank you, Bob. Steve, I agree with you. I also agree with the comments we've heard tonight. Is there any additional public comment? Bob, excuse me, Rob, you had.
Good evening, thank you. Just wanted to go over a couple quick things here. Steve, you're the one that has been mentioning lately that tonight and in the past about if you voted to put this a referendum on the ballot, you would be asking them to vote for this thing. But you're not asking them, you're not, all you're doing, all three of you, is just voting to put it on the ballot to allow the voters to choose whether they want to or not. And I do understand that there are people out there that are financially challenged. I understand that. I understand where you're coming from on your empathy about that, Steve, but all you need to do, if you would, is just remember that you're voting just to put it on the ballot so that the township residents can make their own decisions and tell us what they want. The other thing is, I'm not sure that you, with this particular challenge that's going on with the Palmer property, that it can be negotiated. You are being challenged about your ordinances. You don't have to comment on this. I'm just going to tell you. I know you don't have to comment, but I'm just the township ordinances are.
I mean, it's not before it's the zoning hearing board.
I understand that, but it's not something that you have to negotiate, as far as I know. Anyway, the other thing is, third thing, and I'll be quick, is I think Tommy gave an overview last month, or I think it was last month, that the amount of money that's been spent by the township on this challenge at Palmer was somewhere around $150,000. And as I heard him say, he included sending the solicitor to the township, to the zoning hearing board, as well as the monies that is being paid for Mr. Fury, the solicitor for the zoning hearing board. Well, that should be taken out of the $150,000. We have not spent $150,000 on, I don't think, on the, purely on the zoning hearing board. Now, Mr. Fury has to be there every month anyway, so you're not sending him and spending that money just on this challenge. So I think that should be taken out of this amount of money that was quoted.
Okay, Rob, I appreciate the comments. I would have to check the numbers. I don't have that information, but I understand the intent. It's certainly not a small number that anyone has invested in it, but
What was that last part?
it's not a small number, whatever
No,
the
I
number
know that.
is. But certainly we're not,
I know that.
I understand your comments, and I
I just
appreciate
wanted to
them.
get more in line with what the real numbers are.
I have the numbers.
Thank you.
So we are now, as we sit here today, approaching $200,000 in legal fees. Mike Fury has been paid just for the Palmer application only, approximately $7,000. So not including Mike Fury's bill, the number as we sit here today is about $193,000. I added the numbers. It's a township solicitor and the township planner.
Right, the individual who's helping defend.
I have an expert witness, so that's,
That's part of the equation. I mean, that's, again, I don't want to get into the mechanics of it, but so those are the numbers, unfortunately. Okay,
Well, wait, he made a, to your point, I said the last meeting, there's case law on a lot of these things. And I don't want to say the lawyers know the outcome before they take a case. You go to a lawyer and say, listen, can you help me out? They're pretty much going to know. They may take your case and know you're going to lose, but they have nothing against Bob again, but they have bills to pay as well. And a lawyer will always take your case. He'll always bill you because he has kids in college. He has more, sorry to the lawyer over here as well, but lawyers have bills to pay. And, you know, that's a fact of life. So the bills keep going up. If Mr. Brandt wasn't doing the work, he gets paid for the township work, then everything above that is extra work he's doing on this case, which he spent a lot of time. And people in the township asked me about it, and I said, listen, the township has spent a lot of money defending this case so far. It's very expensive for the township. And I asked someone a question one time, and they said, I think if it's a non-inning baseball game, we're in the first inning. So,
for the record, my kids have graduated from college and are all wage earners.
and the lawyers, right? They're
but
lawyers. Right?
but now you have
Lawyers.
grandkids, right? No, look, I signed the check on the solicitor. So every bill that we get from Bob is itemized out by item. I don't know if those are protected in any way because they're solicitor bills, but yeah, I can tell you that when I sign
Township
it,
bill. We
when I
approve.
sign it every month, it's all itemized out and separated out by, there's general work that he does for, the monthly meetings and things of that nature, and then it's all itemized on the individual elements that they're working on. So yeah, it's all available, and it will require a right-to-know request and something like that, but it's all readily available. Okay. Does anybody else have any public comment? All right. Seeing none, we're going to move forward to the agenda. We're going to start with our official action items. Start always with our consent agenda. And as I do each month, I want to ask both of my board mates, does anybody wish to remove any items from our consent agenda?
Nope.
Okay, then in that case, I will entertain a motion if somebody would like to make one.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh,
Question.
sure.
The treasury report, all the bills are back there, right? They're all there? I forget, if all the bills are itemized back there or not?
Yeah, the bill runs posted there, but keep in mind, when we pay the bill for the township solicitor, it's paid by fund, and there can be more charges in the fund other than things Palmer.
Right.
Right, it's a consolidated number.
It's a
So the
consolidate,
number-
but
the number's
once
much
again,
higher.
And to Mr. Brandt's over there, when we had Mr. Brandt, I believe the first year he was here, he was, I think, 1/7 the price of our previous solicitor. So we've been getting a very, very good deal with Mr. Brandt. Sometimes we question some of the things, but for the most part, he's been a savior to the township on some of these legal bills. Thank you.
Fair enough. So would you like to make a motion, Lou?
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda, treasurer's report, bill payment, and the May 18 business meeting minutes.
And I'll second that.
Okay, and for the record, the bills this month are $334,931.33. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion that is on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Next up, the greatest solicitor in all the land is going to have a public hearing for us. So Bob, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can open the hearing and give us a little backdrop on this.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you all. This is an ordinance, what we call generically a cleanup ordinance. It's an ordinance where over the course of a period of time, the engineer, the manager, the solicitor, board members may have some things that need to be cleaned up in the ordinance. So rather than have an ordinance for every single item, we sort of hold them and periodically adopt a cleanup ordinance. So this is a cleanup ordinance that I can't take full credit for. Your manager's done most of this, but let me mark some exhibits because we like to have a court reporter here for these. First, the ordinance was sent to Montgomery County Planning Commission on the 14th of March. We revised it. The ordinance was placed in the lobby on the website, sent to the Times-Herald on May the 10th, 2022. It was sent to the law library on the 11th. Legal ad number 1 was published on the 27th of May, and the second legal ad was June the 3rd. So we're going to open the public hearing with all those exhibits added to it, and it's a summary of sections that needed clarification, deleting some and adding others. One is to the park and recreation area, dealing with tobacco, nicotine-free areas. The second and third and fourth revisions deal with peddling and soliciting. And there's a section that deals with the definition of family. And we have sections dealing with residential setbacks and fences and walls, including a retaining wall. And then finally, the hours of construction are from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. With that, I'll turn it over to your manager, who can maybe summarize those sections in more detail, and then there'd be an opportunity for folks to ask questions.
Very briefly, additional detail on each of the proposed revisions. The first would prohibit tobacco and nicotine in township parks. The second would require for folks obtaining a solicitation permit who do not live in state a criminal background check in their state of residence. The third would extend the permit duration for solicitation permits from 30 to 90 days. The fourth would extend the hours of permitted solicitation to 7:30 PM from 5 PM. The next one, with regards to the family, the definition isn't changed as to family. The revision here speaks to an accessory dwelling unit on the property, the so-called in-law suite, and confirming that this has to be part of the primary structure, cannot be a standalone separate structure. The next revision regards a 5-foot setback to a property line for a driveway in one residential district only when that district was adopted a few years back. This provision, which is the standard held in most other zoning districts, was omitted, so we are adding the existing standard to this district. The next revision speaks to a clarification that fences of an open style that are permitted in a front yard include aluminum fences and horse fencing. In the final revision speaks to the permitted hours of construction activities, and that is in line with the agreements we now have with, say, developers. We're just codifying this requirement to give the township an additional enforcement option.
So I don't know if everybody could hear, but that's a pretty good summary. It's now it's appropriate if anybody from the public has any questions or comments, we'll attempt to answer. Let's go to the left-hand side. Question?
Christine, you have to come up and if you... And just make sure that Tom can hear you too, because this is a more official...
I'm Christine Steer, S-T-E-E-R-E.
Let's have you sworn in.
Okay. Yes. Yes, C-H. C-H-R-I-S-T-I-N-E. Yeah, you steer a car with an E at the end. Okay, I'm at Baton Road. So I think most of you know that I'm an attorney. I'm a civil rights and employment litigation attorney, and I deal with discrimination and civil rights violations every day. It's what I do for a living, but I'm not here to give any kind of legal advice. So please be clear, I'm not giving legal advice. But my concern with the ordinance proposed with regard to the family definition, I noticed that it states that the accessory dwelling unit, you have to be a single person of at least 60 years of age. And I want to put a face on the kind of impact that that has on residents in this township, because most of you don't know, but 5 years ago when I moved back here from Lower Providence, I moved into a home with an in-law suite so that I could move my elderly parents into my home so that my husband and I could care for my dad, who is disabled and has MS. He's confined to a wheelchair. My mom is his primary caregiver. And based on the changes that you want to make to this ordinance, that would preclude my parents from living in my home. And I just think you need to see that that is probably not compliant with the Fair Housing Amendments Act, the ADA, Title VII. I'm just really concerned. Equal protection under the Due Process Clause and the 14th Amendment Constitution. I mean, all that kind of stuff is impacted when you're trying to restrict somebody's ability to or restrict or discourage someone from living in the township. So, I'm concerned from a legal point of view, but I'm also very concerned from a personal point of view because it does impact my family directly.
I'll let the manager answer that for you.
So on the proposed ordinance, Section 5, the words that are changing can be found in the first line. You look at 5B there. Any number of individuals living together, then it says comma. What we're revising is the phrase "in the same structure." The rest of what's listed on the ordinance is what's in the ordinance today, what's in the code.
Okay,
So
well then
all the change is it's being clear that if you're going to have an in-law suite, it's part of the home itself, and it's not a separate dwelling unit that you're building in the backyard standalone. So the only words we're adding are "in the same structure."
Well then, the language as it is then now also, impacts my family. And I noticed that in the materials that were attached to the agenda tonight, Montgomery County actually pointed that out to you, that there was problems with the language with regard to family, that it would potentially preclude, an elderly couple from living in an in-law suite in Worcester. And it seems as though that it's falling on deaf ears and you're not doing anything with regard to what the county is suggesting that you do in changing the language. So, I want to raise it. It's the first time it's coming to my attention. And like I said, it's, it pricked up my ears, obviously, because of what I do for a living, but it also concerned me because it affects my family. So I just wanted to raise that issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine.
I'm sorry, anybody on the left-hand side? Anybody on the right-hand side? Okay, board members, any questions?
Well, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but is the existing language now problematic, or should we?
Yeah, I want to, I don't know, the manager and I might disagree about this because we've advertised the ordinance, but I think I would feel better if we were more attuned to the comment, and I take another hard look at that.
Okay.
And the manager might not agree with me, but I want to make sure that we're right. And so it doesn't do us any harm to see if we're right or wrong. And if we need to adopt it, we'll do that. I can tell you that practically I've watched the county with many of these things, and we don't get a letter, we don't get their comments until many times the ordinance has been advertised. And as you know, with adopting an ordinance, you can't just make a change the night of the hearing and make a change. So my advice to the board, if you would like, we can defer this. We'd have to re-advertise. If I need to modify the language and talk to the manager about that, we'll have to go through the whole process again. But I think it's worth, my opinion is it's worth looking into.
That's fine. I mean,
I just to note, there are two provisions in here that are more pressing than the others. Not too long ago, we came across a contractor who was widening driveways in the reserve at Center Square. They had gone through 20 properties, and they're widening the driveways to the property line. And right now, these people that are moving in want a wider driveway than Toll is providing. And the neighbors are complaining because they're widening the driveways right to the property line. So that's the most pressing item here to fix. We have about 250 properties over there, less the interior units for the townhomes, and business is booming for the guy that's widening the driveways, and it's causing some issues, especially with stormwater runoff that's not going onto a patch of green before going to the next door neighbor's property. The section that we're talking about too is a little bit of a concern. You might recall there was an application to the zoning hearing board, and the applicant sought relief and an interpretation with regards to an in-law suite. And the township's position was an in-law suite is a suite that is located inside the dwelling. And the zoning hearing board did not agree with that. If that stands, folks can come in with a building permit and build a second dwelling unit on the property, a standalone dwelling unit. Now, as an in-law suite, it might work fine, but there's a challenge for the township in regulating what will eventually become, over time, a rental unit on a property. And with about 3,600 properties in the township, most of which are zoned for one dwelling per property, you could be looking at a very big jump in your population if folks start building a second dwelling unit on the property. I think the definition of the family is worth a review. It is going to take some time. I can tell you that the second dwelling unit is less pressing than the driveway issue. The driveway issue is happening right now, and there are people that are moving into those homes over there that aren't happy with the neighbor's driveway being located an inch from the property line. Somebody gets out of the car and they're stepping on their neighbor's lawn. So it is a problem, and I'd ask the board to consider that.
Mr. Ryan, regarding the driveways, I drove through that development today. There's about 6 or 8 inches of stone between the driveways. Is that why is it a dividing line?
You're talking about the townhomes?
The townhomes.
Okay, the interior units of the townhomes don't have a driveway setback requirement. That's why I said you could exclude them. So for townhomes, it's only the N units. Where this is a bigger problem is with the singles. And the folks don't like the more narrow driveway that comes with the home, and they're blowing them out. And they're going right up to, and we don't have the ordinance right now to stop them. And again, when we adopted the ordinance, this was the RAG 200 district a few years back, following the resolution of that, we forgot to include this provision that we have in every other zoning district.
Right.
So every other zoning district has the 5-foot setback to a property line, but the place where they're widening driveways right now.
Yeah, I saw a neighbor doing something to his driveway, and there was mud in it, and he was blowing all the mud and dirt onto the neighbor's property, and the lady was sitting out there looking at him, and oh, my gosh. I said, call Tommy Ryan. I just, we haven't, I can see it's going to be a problem. This is going to be a real problem in the future for us, just as you drive through that area.
The problem you've got is you cannot sever sections from this ordinance.
I understand.
There's a couple things you could do, right? One is you can adopt it the way it is, and we can take a very significant look at the issues that Christine raised, and we can, if we need to re-adopt or revise that, we do that as a separate standalone, separate ordinance. So that's the one way to correct it.
Okay.
The second way is to not adopt the ordinance at all tonight, have us take a look at the family issue, but the manager brings up a more pressing point. So there's no real easy way to get around this, but
I guess, let me ask the question a slightly different way, Bob. So the issue and question that Christine has raised lives in the ordinance today. It's that the change that we're making doesn't change
her issue.
the issue that she has raised,
don't believe it.
correct? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, again, we're adding the 4 words in the same structure.
Right.
The rest has existed in the ordinance for a couple decades.
But it's potentially wrong, but so we do want to,
Is it may be wrong as
Right.
it is today?
right. So I guess I'm okay potentially with passing, knowing that we need to deal with it
Yeah, that's,
quickly and timely.
yeah, and I would encourage Christine to communicate her questions or her maybe suggested revisions to the manager that I would be able to take a look at.
Okay.
Yeah.
I tell you, we do have another cleanup ordinance in the works.
Yeah.
That's scheduled to be adopted in October.
Right, because we
can
have.
clean up and
like
clean
the,
up.
The temporary signs, and there were some items that came up from the last, so there's already a list of other things, so we could see. I want to make sure it doesn't fall between the cracks either. If we make
Yeah.
a decision to pass it tonight, that we,
I think that may be the correct,
okay,
that maybe the way to do it is to adopt it the way it is tonight, solve
I can change it.
the pressing problem. That doesn't mean your problem is not pressing, but I think it gives us a little bit of an opportunity to fix it correctly.
Right. I agree.
okay.
I didn't think there's any more public comment, and I guess we'd be in a position to close the public hearing at this point. So
Okay.
The public hearing is closed, and the ordinance is, it's ordinance 2022-290. And if there's a motion to adopt that in a second,
Okay.
you can vote on that. Take comment before you vote on it, obviously.
Understood. So does somebody want to make a motion on ordinance 2022-290?
I'll make a motion that we adopt the ordinance 2022-290 as presented.
And I'll second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motions on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and Bob?
Then you're also, you don't need to do it by motion, but you're directing me to take a look at that
Correct.
definition. And I'm requesting that Christine provide me anything that she has that would help me with that.
We'll then get to compare with the best lawyer in the land.
Better not be
Okay.
expensive than me.
Thank you.
Don't be less expensive than me.
All right, so the
Thank you.
next item on our agenda is Resolution 2022-15, which is going to be a resolution to grant preliminary plan approval for, forgive me if I mispronounce, it's Michlen LLC, LD 2021-01, which is an 8-lot subdivision on Artman Road. So how do we want to tackle this one?
Let me maybe try to summarize. We've worked very closely with Joe Nolan and Tommy Ryan, and Mike Clement on behalf of the applicant here. We have a preliminary approval resolution for the Hugoneer property. You've correctly identified it at 17.79 acres off of Artmar Road, separate parcel numbers. They'd be divided in lots 1 through 8, which would be for single-family dwellings, and Lot 9 would be retained by Mr. Hugoneer. The preliminary plans have a number of conditions of approval, all of which A through S, I'm not going to read them, but it requires that they comply in all respects with Joe Nolan's review letters, our traffic engineer review letters, and all those comments. There is going to be a traffic impact fee in the total amount of $25,000. That's based on $3,125 per lot. There's also a voluntary contribution of $32,000 as a fee in lieu of required plantings. And then they need to purchase 8 EDUs at $3,200 per EDU, totaling $26,500. And then we have the other common provisions that require financial security to be posted by the applicant. And you also will be, if you adopt this resolution, you will be approving waivers on the plan that deal with sidewalk installation, curb installation, street lights, the caliper of certain trees, the existing vegetation to meet, certain landscape buffering requirements, and all of which have been recommended for approval by our engineer. So that's the essence of that resolution. There's
one issue here.
Okay. Yep, and I see Mr. Clement and Mr. Del Grippo are here. If they'd have anything to add, you can add it. Otherwise, if the board has questions, feel free.
I do. So I have questions that most likely Joe can answer all, but might require a comment or two from the applicant. Just kind of working through and mostly just clarifying what I've read in terms of the resolution. So there's a couple of waivers for curbing and sidewalks, which is not uncommon that, that might be requested, but there's also on page 2, item G talks about, we don't have a number yet. And I guess I want to just make sure that there's agreement between the applicant and the township in terms of that being.
Fee in lieu of?
Yeah, so if I remember, if I'm looking at this, we haven't picked a number for that particular item G in terms of a voluntary in lieu of required sidewalk and curb.
Right.
I don't know if we've historically just left that open or not, and I just
Well, this is preliminary planning.
Okay.
I talked to Bob about that, and we're going to pick that up in the final plan.
Okay, so we're okay that it's just a preliminary, we don't need to be overly concerned that'll get filled in as we move forward, that makes sense.
Yeah, the language in there, I think, Rick, says, shall be determined by the township engineer at final plan approval, so.
Understood, I still like to ask my questions, Bob. I think some people measure twice and cut once, I measure 3 or 4 times and then hesitate to cut. So that's fine. There's also, in terms of the waivers, I see there's F, G, and H, and I just want to clarify why they're being asked, just to make sure. There's 2, obviously, that pertain to stormwater management and sort of some adjustments they're looking to make, and Joe, maybe you could just offer a quick why that's okay?
The first one is 20-inch curb radius on the intersection with Artmore Road. If you know Artmore, they're going to be constructing a road into the site, a cul-de-sac.
Right.
For the 8 lots. And that's just to maintain a lesser turning radius at that particular corner.
Maybe just one thought was just fire equipment and whether there's any concern with that.
Now, the road's 28 feet wide, so it's plenty wide for that.
Okay.
And the part of the transportation engineer's review was a turning radius and all the fire equipment for the roads.
Perfect.
And that's all been approved. Second one, stormwater management, a partial waiver for use of high high-density polyethylene pipe for storm sewers. We normally, we do require a reinforced concrete pipe in our ordinance, but we've always allowed the applicant to use the plastic pipe outside of the right-of-way, but anything in the road and right-of-way would still have to be concrete, and I have no problem with that. Stormwater basin slopes of 3 to 1. Our ordinance for years and years and years was always 3 to 1 on basin side slopes. Now it's 5 to 1. This lot is probably 90% trees, and the trade-off here was a 3 to 1 slope versus a 5 to 1 slope. We'd be taking down a huge number of additional trees.
Okay.
3 to 1 is not unmanageable. Most of the basins you'll ever see are 3 to 1. But our ordinance, new ordinance is 5 to 1. I have no problem with that.
Okay, fair enough. And then my last question that I had, and it might be for the applicant, it might be for you, is just item G talks about potentially building in phases. And I mean, is that just still an open question in terms of how they might roll out? So it's on page 3 of 6. Number J says that in the event the applicant elects to proceed with development in phases, there's some language that's in there, and I'm just asking in terms of the project whether that's still just something that's being determined or why it's there.
Phasing.
Can you just come just so we can get you, Mike, if you don't mind, just so we can get you on the,
Yeah.
Good evening, my name's Mike Clement. I'm a principal in Mike Len. My partner, Len Del Grippo, is with us here tonight, hence the very original name of Mike Len. I'm
Original.
So, no, we're not, I think that's something we see all the time in ordinances, in resolutions, just as a matter that would allow some flexibility. So it's something that almost all attorneys, I'm an attorney, I represent municipalities, almost all attorneys put in their ordinances for flexibility, but I can state categorically, we do not intend to do this on a phasing basis.
okay, perfect.
More applicable, Rick, in larger subdivisions, and it gives some flexibility if it's a, it could be a 30 to 60.
I know we've just seen a couple of developments that have taken 20 years, in terms of, because of that, a house here, a house there. And again, I'm not saying that's not my area, just want to clarify the question for here. But thank you, Mike, I appreciate that. I'm going to turn it left or right if you guys have.
Joe, this property came in 20 years ago or something, and it was rejected? No. The property was subdivided, a subdivision plan was prepared, and I believe it received preliminary approval.
Yes.
But what I heard was that the cost of the improvements associated with the development, which actually included a reconstruction of Windy Hill Road, complete reconstruction, were so exorbitant that nobody really wanted to build it. And that was probably less robust economic times as well. So that it was never finalized. It received never got that preliminary far. approval, but it never received final approval. It never went for approval resolution or anything like that.
Okay. I guess I've gotten gun shy with stormwater management and making any kind of looking with sidewalks. We never really address sidewalks in the township. We always give waivers to those. And as we had some of these stormwater management problems, you start seeing how the sidewalks and the curbing brings the water to the road, to the water outlets. A lot of roads in Worcester don't have curbs, so the water runs over, AKA Bethel Road problems we've had there, that PennDOT comes in and the road keeps going higher and higher, then it floods everyone's lawn out. So for a year and a half, we had a lot of problems with Windy Hill, with flooding up there and the problems associated with that. I just want to make sure that we were going from the 5-to-1 to the 3-to-1 slope, that we're still in, a good footing here, that we're not going to have any water problems, because the property sits on top of the hill and water flows downhill to some extent, even on non-developed ground. I was over there because we were having complaints from the neighbor a year and a half ago, and I was surprised the amount of water coming from that open piece of ground down the road?
Well, everything here falls away from that
Wait,
area.
okay,
You are correct in that there were stormwater issues on Artmore. Part of the design, when we met with the engineer initially, was to correct those existing problems. There was, when Nicole Drive was put in, there was an inlet put in that was going to connect to that previous subdivision. That never happened.
never happened.
We're going to reconnect that with this subdivision, and it'll improve the flow coming down Artmore Road. And also at the rear of those properties, there's swales that will take that water into the stormwater management on the property. There will be no water coming towards Germantown Pike. It'll be going away from it. And this subdivision was constructed with our new stormwater management ordinance. So I can tell you for a fact that it meets all the requirements of our newer ordinance.
Okay, very good. And I agree with Rick. I think this is just the beginning of it, and I think as long as we can clean it up and have another shot at it later on, which you suggested, I'm fine with it. So, thank you.
Yeah, this is preliminary plan only at this point.
Lou, do you have any additional questions for it?
No, you guys covered all the bases, I'm sure.
Okay. In that case, I will entertain a motion if somebody would like to make one.
So make a motion to approve resolution, was it 2022-15?
That's correct.
Preliminary plan approval.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor? Oh, Sue, hold on. You got to come. Mike, you're good. I'm going to swap you, and then Sue, you need to come up and. You got to wait so we get you on the recording, if you don't mind.
Just had a question because I didn't hear it fully, but I thought I heard something like there was going to be $35,000 in lieu of something that had to do with landscaping or some kind of requirement.
Right, so one of the items is they take a look at vegetation and different things that need to be in place, and in some cases, they don't want to take more trees out or less trees out, so they'll occasionally come to an agreement on putting some more money so you're not ripping apart more trees and items that are there. So it's an allocation, and Joe, maybe you can just fill in the...
Yeah, this has to do with replacement trees. We have an ordinance, in our ordinance, it says on properties, if you take down more than X% of the trees, you have to replace them at different places on the property. The problem here is the entire property is already wooded. There's no place to put additional trees. So they've asked for a waiver, and what they're doing in lieu of planting those trees on that property, they're offering a fee to the township to use towards their landscaping.
Okay, so in other words, the lot is like fully trees, it has trees over the whole thing.
Yeah, it's
So they have to take some trees down in order to build a house,
Yes.
but there's no other place to add more trees.
Yeah, there's no place to put...
cutouts, if you will, for each house, and then you wind up, what you don't want to do is put more trees, because then they kill the trees that are there, and you start planting too many.
There's a difference between replacement trees and landscaping. They still have to do landscaping on the project, along the road, on the lots. This only has to do with replacement trees.
Replacement trees that were taken down because they needed to be moved to provide space for the house.
It's trees removed to put the infrastructure in, the
Right.
roads, and build the houses.
Okay.
Right. That's what it is. There's still a landscaping plan. They'll still put street trees along the roads. They'll still put landscaping on the lots that's required. That's still going to
I
happen.
just feel strongly about keeping trees as much as we can. The property that used to be the beautiful Center Square Golf Course is now just flatlined with nothing hardly there.
Yeah, I can assure you they're not going to clear cut the lot. They're
Right.
only going to take down the trees they need to.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there any additional public comment regarding the motion that is on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Good luck, Mike. And Len. Okay, so next up, we've got bid awards, and it looks like they've got to be handled.
You missed the planning module.
I jumped right ahead there. I don't know why I did that. So My apologies. Item E, which is a resolution 2022.
Mike, you might want to stick around in case there's a question. We have your planning module.
That's okay.
Just-
You can start the car, he'll be right out.
Okay, so I'm going to hand this one over to you guys to talk about the planning module and
Yes.
what we're dealing with on that one.
Part of this project that we just talked about, they're putting public sewer in to connect to the existing public sewer system in Artmore.
Gotcha.
Because of the topography and the fact that everything flows away from Artmore, they have to put in a low-pressure system, which we've used in other developments. The Sparango development is the last one we use, low pressure. We use it in Windy Hill, not Hickory Hill development. It's all low pressure. So there's nothing unique about the concept. But in order for them to put public sewer in, they have to get planning module approval for the township to revise our 537 plan. And what this module is, you pass a resolution indicating that you approve the revision to the township's 537 plan to allow public sewer service to this development. That's what it is. I've reviewed the module, which was prepared by their engineer, and I provided Tommy with a letter indicating that it was ready to be submitted to DEP. This is the last piece, basically, is the resolution, then the module can be submitted to DEP.
And just for my clarification, DEP then needs to approve the module. Like, there's still an approval step at DEP that, we're just authorizing to send it to them to provide that.
You're asking DEP to modify, to revise your existing 537.
537 plan, gotcha.
That's what this does. It revises the 537 plan.
That makes sense.
Mr. Chairman, question. When you talk about Hickory Hill, big discussion about the size of the pipe we're using for sewer hookups and things. Are we going a smaller pipe or bigger pipes in this to allow hookups?
There's only, if you know where this property is.
Yeah, right. So we're just
There's
thinking
no
those 8 homes.
allowance. There's no allowance for making it bigger to allow more homes to connect.
Somewhere else, there's nothing else with that that
The
someone's
force
gonna
main,
piggyback on it.
right, the force main in the road will be 2 inches. Each house will have a grinder pump with a 1 1/4 inch force main that ties into the 2-inch line. That 2-inch line will connect to the gravity sewer system in Artmore,
Okay.
and then flow to the Berwick treatment plant.
Right. I know sewer doesn't flow uphill, but I'm thinking of the 12 acres on the other side of Trooper Road and Germantown Pike, that somebody's going to do something with that in the future, that they don't tie, somewhere there's no way to tie into that.
They'd have to get easements across the remainder of the property. I mean, Mr. Huganier may want to hook his house up at some point. That would be a one-shot deal, but I can't say that that'll never happen, but this is designed to only serve the 8 homes.
Okay, so we're doing the best job we can by limiting the amount of sewer in that area with this project.
You're
Best we
putting
can.
in the biggest line necessary to handle the flows. You're not oversizing the line to handle 50 other homes.
Okay,
Yes.
right. Thank you.
Okay. Any other question? I will entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve Resolution 2022-16, Planning Module.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Now you're good, Mike. Thank you. So now we're on to the bid awards. And do we need to handle them as 2 separate
Yes.
items? Okay. Which one do we want to do first here, Joe?
It would be general construction.
Okay.
This contract is for general construction and electrical construction to install a disc filter system at the Valley Green Wastewater Treatment Plant to replace the 2 gravity tertiary filters that are old, antiquated, and falling apart. This project will require a small building between the 2 treatment plants, and this disc filter will be inside enclosed in a building. There'll also be some piping involved. A separate contract, the township has purchased the filter separately under contract through CoStars with Dutchland, and they will do the installation of the filter. This is to construct the building, interconnecting piping, and the electrical to complete the project. The general construction bids were open on June 8th, and there were six bids. The low bid was submitted by F.W. Howder, that's Houder, of Malvern, Pennsylvania. His base bid was $228,612, but we always add in alternate items in case of unforeseen circumstances, which would increase the bid to $238,362. If we don't need those alternate items, they won't be charged, but they're just catch-all items. So we reviewed his qualifications. We've actually worked with him on a project in Hatfield before, and I actually met the gentleman when we had the walkthrough with all the contractors at the plant before the bid. So I am recommending that the township award the general construction contract to F.W. Howder, Inc. for $238,362.
Thank you, Joe. So one item I just want to add, or to clarify, and it's not specific to the bid, but we're going to be able to use ARPA funds for this particular project, is my understanding?
Yes, that is what Mr. Ryan has indicated.
Okay, and just for the audience, those are the American Rescue Plan Act funds. We got half of the money last year. There's another half that's coming this year, something in the neighborhood of $1 million as part of one of the federal programs through COVID. And so there's an opportunity to work this project with those funds. So does anybody have any specific questions? I think it's fairly straightforward in terms of the bid and the amounts, but does anybody have any questions for Joe?
Rick, a big question would be over there, building improvements. Anything changed with the noise level or the fans, anything associated with that?
This filter does not have any blowers, fans, or anything. It's actually, it moves circularly, and the water flows through the circular discs that turn. So there's no...
It's not generating any heat or any...
No.
Any other... Okay.
It's very slow moving. It won't be generating any noise.
Okay.
It's not, the blowers are the things that generally are the noise producers. No.
Okay, thank you.
Plus, it'll be a block building with insulation, so that'll mitigate any noise that would be on the inside as well.
Anything, Lou?
Nope, we're good.
Okay, and I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the Valley Green wastewater treatment plant to F.W. Howder Incorporated for $238,362.
I'll second that bid award.
It's been moved in second, and is there any public comment on the motion on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passed. Next up, we've got the next bid, Joe.
The second bid for the same project is for the electrical construction, and we received on June 8th 10 bids from 10 different contractors. This work includes the electrical work for the installation of a control panel, control wiring, electrical wiring and conduit in the new building, lights, heat, that type of thing. Base bid for the project was $82,000, and again, we have several alternate add-in items in case we hit any unforeseen circumstances. When you're on a site like this, you're digging, sometimes location of conduits is off from where the as-built says, so this includes provisions if we need to relocate any conduit when we start digging. There's a unit price for that, which brings the total to $86,020. And we also included an alternate item 3, which is to replace the motors in the control building number 1, which is the far building, the back building, on the blowers with variable frequency drives. What that does, right now they're single speed, always on high. And what the drives do is it allows you to lower the speed down, turn the speed down, use electricity We don't need it on high, we just don't need that much air, which is what the blowers provide. So the operators indicated they can probably use half as much air as we're actually getting. So putting these in will do two things. It'll slow the speed down of the blowers, and it will also reduce electric consumption at the treatment plant. It is an expensive item, but Tommy and I talked, and he's already figured out the payback is worth the investment.
Yeah, my understanding is it's pretty significant in terms of, particularly with rising PICO rates, that
Yes.
you'll work it back much faster now because they're raising the rates. I mean, in essence,
Yeah, and the rates are significantly being raised.
Joe, is that permanently wired in, or is that on a rheostat? Can that fan be adjusted?
They replaced the motors,
Right.
and then their variable drives, it's electric. It's on a rheostat is basically what, a good way to put it. And it's, you can turn it up or turn it down based on the current going through it.
Okay, so it's sort of on a rheostat, then it can be turned up or down. It's not set at one. Okay, thank you. One level.
Based on the hertz going into the motor is what it's based on.
So, Joe, on that same topic, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm going to put you on the spot. There's going back a couple of years, there was conversation about sort of that hum, the hum that, and am I correct in saying that the ability to maybe manage these differently potentially helps, is it like potentially one of the reasons to do this is to sort of help ensure that.
Well, anytime you lower a speed on a blower, you're going to reduce the noise. The blowers are like 3,500 RPMs. If you can reduce that down to 2,500 RPMs, obviously that's going to have an impact. I can't tell you if it's going to be 100%. It'll also potentially eliminate some of the vibration as well.
Okay. I know that we tried to get grant money for a couple of years for some improvements, and we didn't get, so in essence, we're doing those items with these projects.
That didn't include putting VFDs on. That included putting enclosures on, and we're still going to do that.
Okay.
As a separate contract.
Okay. But we're ultimately making an investment in there to try to enhance and improve.
Yes, on newer plants, when we design treatment plants, any motor that we can put a VFD on we do, because it's a big electric user. Those things run 24 hours a day. So,
okay.
You have 4 blowers in there. I think they're 20 horsepower each. That's a lot of horsepower and a lot of electric.
Okay. Any other questions, Steve or Lou?
No, sir.
Nope.
Okay, then does somebody want to make a motion on this bid item?
I'll make a motion to accept the bid award for, is it Electric Tech, for $86,020?
Nope, we're at 192.
Yeah, if you're awarding everything, it's 192.
That was one thing. So the company is Electric Tech, still for $192,020.
So we're doing
I'm sorry.
the alternate bid items as well.
I'm just said, all right, you're right. Okay, so it's $192,020.
Perfect.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion passes. Next up, we have other business. Does either board member have any other business that they wish to bring before us tonight? Okay, then we're going to move on to public comment. Does anybody have any additional public comment they wish to present? Bob?
So, not to beat a dead horse, but just so I
The
can
night of the horse show as well. Yeah.
Exactly. Just so I can understand. So the 18, 20 million, whatever it is, that's the general fund, correct? For the whole township. Okay, go ahead. What is it?
So we talk about dollars on hand. We have about $18.6 million on hand. Of that amount, approximately 14.7 is completely unrestricted. The balance is restricted either by state law or township policy. By state law, we're looking at dollars we receive in liquid fuel funds, which can only be used for road projects, and dollars that are made payable to the Act 209 Transportation Impact Fee. Okay, those can only be used for things related to roads. The money that is reserved by township policy are the dollars in the wastewater treatment plant. So if we exclude all of those, we have about, say, $14.5 million in completely unrestricted funds.
And the capital fund is separate from that?
I'm consolidating
Oh, okay.
all four funds together, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the unrestricted is 14.5 million-ish.
I'm sorry?
The
That's correct.
unrestricted is about 14.5 million.
Oh, 14.5 million.
Yeah, okay. Now, there's an open space fund,
Yes.
and I remember reading a study months ago from 2019, but it had the balance in that open space fund for 2000, as of the end of 2018. Some, if I could be off a little bit, but somewhere around 1.8 million.
The open space fund has,
have
well,
in here now?
just the open space acquisition fund has about 1.49 million. Then there's another fund called the Park and Trail Development Fund. And they're similar, and that has about $690,000 in it.
Right.
Those are unrestricted dollars, yeah.
So they've been put,
Those are,
they're unrestricted, even though from an accounting standpoint, we're throwing them in different accounts. They're not restricted to a specific use, whereas Tommy was saying certain funds have a restricted use to them.
correct, and in fact, I remember reading something about that. So we, roughly
You know
that
better than
balance
I.
has
You're
not
the, you're the
changed.
CPA. You know better than I do.
So that, since 2018, the open space fund is about the same, right? I mean, it's 1.4, you said, or something, and it was, if I remember, around 1.5 to 1.8 back then. Okay, so if we have 14 million in the unrestricted fund, why do we not put, 5 million or whatever as seed into the open space fund?
The separate funds that we have, again, are completely unrestricted. At any time, the board can shift those dollars
You can move them
around.
back.
Yeah, so we do that so we have maximum flexibility. You don't want to come across in a situation where you can't borrow money and you need to make a $5, $6, $7 million repair. So unless the state says thou shalt not spend it this way, we do our best to allocate it, but we can, at a moment's notice, switch the dollars around. It's also important to note that while we purchase a piece of ground, have a piece of ground under agreement for sale for $2 million,
Right.
that doesn't mean we cut a $2 million check at settlement. In fact, what we'll do is, like most people do when they buy open space, is you go out for either a bond or a note from a bank, and you pay it over 20 to 30 years.
Right.
So with our property on Fisher Road, assuming we settle, we'll pay that with a borrowing that's paid over 30 years, and the debt service for that next year will be about $150,000. So folks say, well, if you already spent $2 million, now we're down to $12.5 million. That's not the case. Because
Right.
it's like a mortgage. You're
Even
gonna
though
pay
you're
for it.
probably paying more in interest than you're earning on the.
Well, we're lucky because we're government, because it's a tax.
Yeah,
tax.
that's another story. So the 14 million, is that earmarked for other, I'm trying to understand why we're worried about putting more money into the open space fund if we have 14 million, based off of our annual budget, which appears that we have excess
So
or
when we-
surplus in most years.
I don't think we ever addressed putting more money into it. My comment was, as far as the referendum, if we're going to, the state of the economy, if we're going to raise $500,000, the township can easily move $500,000 into that fund and for open space, rather than burden the taxpayers of the township. Not saying it can't be done in the future, but right now, the way the economic problems are in the country, even Worcester, that just to get us over that, we're doing the right thing. The money's getting there. It doesn't matter if we're asking all the residents in the township to give it. It's the taxpayers' money already that's there. Rather than asking them to give more money, we'll just put the money in. We'll use the taxpayers' money to put it there. So
Right.
it's done. So as of a few months, we could have that $500,000 in the fund already, rather than asking the taxpayers to dip into their pockets a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a little bit of my point. If we have that much excess money for the size township we have in the budget, seems like significant. you could almost self,
Well, we have. Historically, we have. I mean, we haven't had an open,
but it's not dedicated, it's
right.
because
So
it's
the-
unrestricted and can either not go in or go in and come back.
Correct, and certainly, we made an acquisition without a referendum.
Right.
I mean, I mean, the mechanics are there to do it either way, and these are the pros and cons that get weighed, ultimately.
Right.
But
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, we still don't have a dedicated fund. So I just wanted to understand the dynamics of that. And then, that was good that Tommy went through the open space fund. I forgot that that's sort of unrestricted anyway. But
Right.
the $1.8 million, $1.5 million, I was curious what that balance was today. So now I know that. So thanks.
thanks,
Bob,
Bob.
a follow-up to your question, as I said, I sit on the Open Space Board, the Farmland Preservation Board, the one that buys the land in the county. And we went on we visited 23 properties 2 weeks ago in the county. And I said here before that Worcester has always been very good of matching the money that's needed. Franconia Township does it, and Worcester does it. A lot of these other townships have open space funds. They never give any money to the county for open space money. We go and ask them. We ask them for 20. We'll start at 25%. How about 20%? How about 15%? Nope, they don't give it. And Worcester has been always very good about doing it. And I think to Mr. Ryan, we discussed this before, that I think by Mr. Ryan looking at the numbers, we could borrow money and do some financial planning with open space. That's something that if we instructed him to look at, how can we go about acquiring some of these properties? And I think that's what he was looking at when we had some of the staff a year and a half, 2 years ago, start this open space fund, trying to set a goal of so much open space in the township by a certain date. It was a goal we set, and that's why we started this open space fund, just to see, hey, if people really want it, are they willing to contribute money? And I talked about estates being set up for tax purposes. We have people, we just worked with someone in the county last month willing to donate money to the county to preserve property in certain areas of the county. I have to be careful what I say, but it's there. Some people who have the financial wherewithal to do that, God bless them, and hey, they can do that and help out their neighborhood. So there's a lot of different things we can try to do, but I think Worcester is in a situation where, once again, the money's been managed very well over the years. We don't have a police force, like we talked about Whippane. Their budget's $19 million. They're having an open space referendum to pay for painting of their buildings. They have no money.
Right.
So it's just something, we're very fortunate that we don't have a lot of the other expenses. We can maintain our roads, our equipment with the funds we have at the present time. But it's always an ongoing battle.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, it's well run, and like you said, we have surplus and we have liquidity for sure. I just think that in spite of that 14 million, a dedicated fund would tell the residents that, they've decided to have dedicated funding for it. They know it's going to be there come hell or high water each year, and you can't use it for anything else. I think, that's the value that brings them versus needing to have, don't take it the wrong way, but 3 supervisors decide to use the money for property acquisitions or asking the county or people to contribute. This would be the dedicated source. So,
well, it's interesting.
That makes a lot of sense.
I talked to a lot of people in the township, and someone approached me last week and said, you know what? I have a lot of land in the township, and I pay a lot of taxes. And everyone talks about the beauty of Worcester driving down these roads. Mm-hmm. I'm paying the taxes. I'm not talking about myself. I'm paying the taxes to keep that land open so everyone can move into Worcester and say, that's a really nice piece of property. I enjoy passing that every day. Mm-hmm. Well, the landowner came to me and said, I'm paying that. I pay a lot of taxes in the township to keep this open so that people can enjoy the majestic value of Worcester. So do you want to pay my taxes? Would Worcester be interested in paying my real estate taxes just for the scenic view for the drive? So that's, you deal with a lot of different situations here from different people. So it's not always that easy. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it. Does anybody else have any? Christine?
This is is really quick. This is probably more directed toward Tommy. I was wondering now that
Bless you.
people are coming back and we're having events in person, I was wondering if Worcester is going to have its Community Day again. Are we going to bring that back? Is there a plan to do that?
Not this year. We'll take a look at it next year. Because of the lead time for reservations for some of the vendors, we had to be locked by the end of February to get the bigger vendors there. And we didn't know where we'd be come fall. So we decided to go with 4 smaller, more modest events this year. 2 movie nights, Moon Bounce Day, and a day with petting zoo and pony rides, and then revisit it next year.
Yeah, because I've been watching the newsletter and I didn't see anything, and I knew it was like sometimes usually in September, so I was like, they probably would need to know.
Yeah, so in the summer newsletter, we just promote the 2 movie nights in the fall. We'll do the ponies and the petting zoo and the moon bounce.
Cool. All right, I just wanted to check. Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you, Christine. Does anybody else have any public comment for the board tonight? Seeing none, motion to adjourn. Thank you all for coming.